Push open the doors of any village church hall on a Saturday afternoon in 1955, and the smell reached you before your eyes had even adjusted to the gloom. Warm custard, scorched sugar, and stewed fruit rising off a long trestle table draped in a white cloth. This was the parish bring and buy, where every woman in the congregation laid down her finest pudding for a few coppers and a great deal of quiet pride. These were desserts built on thrift and Sunday-best ambition, conjured from a tin of evaporated milk and a heel of stale bread. Today, most have vanished entirely, remembered only in faded Women's Institute recipe books. We're counting down 30 forgotten church hall desserts from the 1950s that nobody makes anymore. Let's begin with number 30. Number 30. Junket trembled on the tea plates of church halls when a pudding needed to be made in minutes and cost almost nothing. Housewives warmed a pint of milk to blood temperature, stirred in sugar and a few drops of rennet, then left it to set into a pale, quivering curd. A grating of nutmeg finished it, and a jug of thin cream if the collection plate had been generous. Children poked the surface to watch it shiver, half delighted and half suspicious. Yet junket demanded fresh rennet and a gentle hand, and when packet mousses arrived, its delicate wobble was forgotten. Today it survives only in the memories of those who ate it. Number 29. Sago pudding earned the cruel schoolyard nickname of frog spawn, and no amount of jam ever quite shifted the reputation. Housewives simmered the tiny starch pearls in sweetened milk until they swelled and turned translucent, dotting the surface with a spoonful of red jam that children stirred into pink ribbons. A bag of sago cost a few pence and stretched across a fortnight of afters. In chilly church halls after Sunday school, it arrived warm and filling, the cheapest way to end a meal on a full stomach. When puddings grew fancier and freezers arrived, the humble pearl was quietly abandoned. Its gluey charm now lingers only in the shudders of those forced to finish a bowl. Number 28. Tapioca pudding was sago's larger, wobblier cousin, and it divided every parish hall down the middle. The bigger pearls burst softly between the teeth, suspended in creamy, sweetened milk, coaxed low and slow on the range. By the mid-1950s, tapioca appeared on nursery menus and church supper tables alike, prized because a few ounces fed a crowd. Mothers grated nutmeg across the top, or hid a blob of jam in the middle as a reward for a cleared plate. Oral histories recall children lining the pearls up on their spoons, stalling for time, while fathers ate it without complaint. Yet tapioca could not compete with the glamour of tinned peaches and instant whip. Today, it survives as a curiosity, remembered more for its texture than its taste. Number 27. Semolina pudding was the milk pudding that anchored countless church hall teas, plain, warm, and unfailingly cheap. Housewives whisked fine semolina into simmering milk until it thickened to a soft, spoonable cream, sweetened with sugar, and often crowned with a scarlet dollop of jam. Stirred through, it turned a cheerful marbled pink that made even reluctant children pick up their spoons. A packet cost a matter of pence and fed a Sunday school class with ease. In the Ministry of Food's thrift campaigns, semolina was held up as nourishing and economical, the perfect way to stretch a pint of milk. Diaries recall the skin that formed on top, fought over by some and scraped aside by others. When puddings modernized, semolina slipped from favor. Today, it is a nursery memory, warm and half forgotten. Number 26. Blancmange shimmered on the buffet table as the centerpiece of any self-respecting parish tea. Housewives whisked cornflour into sweetened milk, flavored it with vanilla or a splash of pink coloring, then poured the mixture into elaborate molds shaped like rabbits, castles, or fluted rings. Set overnight in the cold larder, it emerged trembling and glossy, turned out to gasps of admiration. A molded blancmange cost only pennies, yet it looked like the work of a proper cook. Children waited to see whether the rabbit's ears would survive the unmolding, a small drama at every fete. Yet as ready-made desserts arrived, the molds were packed away. Today, the wobbling rabbit is a relic of a vanished art. Number 25. Coconut ice was the sweet stall's reliable earner, sold in pink and white slabs at every jumble sale and summer fete. Housewives beat desiccated coconut into condensed milk and icing sugar, pressed half the mixture into a tin, tinted the rest a defiant rose pink, and layered them together before cutting into squares. It needed no baking, no oven, and no great skill, only a strong arm and a sweet tooth. A batch cost £1 in ingredients and raised many times that for the church roof fund. Children spent their pocket money on a single sugary square, the coconut catching in their teeth. Oral histories recall the two-tone squares wrapped in greaseproof paper, sold by the bagful. As shop sweets grew cheaper, homemade coconut ice faded from the trestle tables, surviving today only at the most traditional of fetes. Number 24. Milk jelly turned an ordinary packet of jelly into something rich and opaque, and church hall cooks swore by it. Instead of dissolving the jelly in water alone, housewives whisked in cold, evaporated milk, beating until it doubled in volume and set into a pale, mousse-like cloud. Softer and creamier than clear jelly, it stretched a single 6-penny packet to feed twice as many. Set in a glass dish or molded into shapes, it caught the light with a soft glow that clear jelly never could. Children preferred its gentle sweetness, and mothers loved that it cost so little. Yet as fresh cream grew affordable, the trick was forgotten. Today, few remember jelly was ever made this way. Number 23. Rock cakes rattled onto every church hall table, misshapen, sturdy, and utterly beloved. Housewives rubbed margarine into flour, threw in a handful of currants and mixed peel, bound it with a little milk, and dropped rough spoonfuls onto a tray to bake into craggy, golden mounds. The lumpier they looked, the more authentic they were said to be. A tray of a dozen cost mere pence and used up whatever dried fruit lingered in the larder. In the Women's Institute, rock cakes were the first thing every young bride learned to bake, forgiving of mistakes and quick to make. Oral histories recall children grabbing them warm from the cooling rack, currants bursting sweet. As shop biscuits grew cheaper and glossier, the humble rock cake slipped from fashion, surviving today mostly in nostalgia and church cookbooks. Number 22. Butterfly buns fluttered onto the fete table as the prettiest thing a thrifty cook could make. Housewives baked small plain sponge cakes, sliced a shallow cone from each top, halved it into 2 wings, then piped a swirl of buttercream into the hollow and set the wings back at a jaunty angle. A dusting of icing sugar finished them, and a dot of jam if the budget allowed. A batch cost £1 and looked like far more, which was rather the point at a bring and buy. Children chose them over every other cake, drawn to the wings and the sweet cream beneath. As bakery cupcakes took over, the butterfly bun quietly folded its wings. Today, it is a half-remembered treat. Number 21. Maids of honor carried an air of history to the humblest parish tea, said to have delighted Tudor royalty centuries before. Housewives lined patty tins with puff pastry, filled each with a spoonful of sweetened curd cheese flavored with lemon and nutmeg, and baked them until the pastry rose crisp and the filling puffed and set. Delicate and slightly tangy, they felt grander than their penny's worth of ingredients suggested, appearing at church garden parties and vicarage teas as a nod to gentility on a working-class budget. Yet the curd filling took time and care, and as convenience desserts spread, the little tarts fell away. Today, maids of honor survive in a scattering of traditional bakeries, a fragile echo of a courtly past. Number 20. Yorkshire curd tart was the pride of northern church halls, a golden tart that spoke of dairy farms and careful thrift. Housewives made curds by souring warm milk, drained them through muslin, then mixed the soft cheese with currants, sugar, beaten egg, and a pinch of allspice before pouring it into a short crust case. Baked until just set and freckled brown, it was served cold in generous wedges. A tart cost little more than the milk it started with, and every farmhouse guarded its own recipe. Oral histories from the Dales recall the scent of nutmeg and curds drifting from the oven on baking day. Yet making curds from scratch took patience most modern cooks abandoned, and as shop-bought puddings filled the shelves, the curd tart retreated north. Today it survives only in Yorkshire's most traditional kitchens. Number 19. Manchester tart layered thrift and indulgence into a single generous slice. Housewives spread a short crust base with a thick smear of raspberry jam, poured over a deep layer of set custard, then finished it with a blanket of desiccated coconut, and if the occasion was grand, a single glacé cherry in the center. Cut into squares, it fed a hall full of hungry parishioners for pennies a head. In the Northwest especially, no church supper was complete without it, and school dinner cooks made it by the tray. Oral histories recall children racing for the corner pieces, where the jam ran thickest. Yet as sponge puddings and packet desserts arrived, the Manchester tart slipped from the rota. Today it lingers mostly in the memory of northern childhoods. Number 18. Gypsy tart was the sweetest, most reckless pudding a Kentish church hall ever produced, and generations of school children adored it. Housewives whipped tinned evaporated milk with dark muscovado sugar until it turned pale and mousse-like, poured it into a pastry case, and baked it briefly until the filling set into a sticky, caramel-brown sponge. It was almost absurdly sweet, and that was precisely its glory. In Kent, gypsy tart was a fixture of school dinners and Sunday teas, two cheap ingredients making a pudding children never forgot. Oral histories recall the way it clung to the roof of your mouth, sweet enough to make you wince and grin at once. As tastes turned lighter, the tart faded outside its home county, surviving today as a treasured regional secret. Number 17. Baked custard tart was the quiet aristocrat of the parish tea table, plain, wobbling, and quietly perfect. Housewives lined a deep tin with short crust, poured in a mixture of eggs, milk, and sugar, then grated fresh nutmeg across the top, before baking it slow until the custard set with barely a tremble, the trick being to pull it out while the center still shivered. A tart cost the price of a few eggs and a pint of milk, yet it looked and tasted like something from a fine bakery. Oral histories recall the fragrant cloud of nutmeg and the smooth, cool slice served on a summer afternoon. Yet the custard was unforgiving, curdling at the first excess of heat, and as reliable packet fillings arrived, the skill faded. Today, a proper baked custard tart is a rare find. Number 16. Eve's pudding tempted the church hall with the simplest of tricks, hiding stewed fruit beneath a light Victoria sponge. Housewives filled a dish with sliced cooking apples and a scatter of sugar, spread a plain sponge batter over the top, and baked it until the sponge rose golden and the fruit bubbled up sharp and sweet around the edges. Named for the apple, it turned a few windfalls from the vicarage garden into a proper hot pudding for pennies. Oral histories recall the moment the spoon broke through the sponge to release the steaming fruit beneath. In autumn, when allotments overflowed, Eve's pudding appeared week after week. Yet as crumbles and shop desserts took hold, it slipped away, now a forgotten cousin of the better-remembered crumble. Number 15. Bakewell tart carried a whisper of Derbyshire grandeur to church halls across the land. Housewives spread a pastry case with a layer of jam, poured over a rich almond frangipane, and baked it until the top turned golden and firm, sometimes finished with a scattering of flaked almonds or a thin drizzle of icing. It felt like a treat above its station, yet a whole tart cost only a shilling or two. In the Women's Institute, a well-made Bakewell was a mark of real accomplishment, its almond scent filling the kitchen and the debate over jam flavor, raspberry against strawberry, splitting every parish. Yet, as boxed, cherry-topped versions filled the supermarket shelves, the homemade tart lost ground. Today, the proper almond Bakewell survives mostly in traditional tea rooms. Number 14. Treacle tart was the sticky golden reward at the end of many a church supper, and children counted the minutes until it appeared. Housewives warmed golden syrup with fresh breadcrumbs and a squeeze of lemon, poured the mixture into a pastry case, and often laid strips of pastry across the top in a lattice before baking it to a burnished amber. A tin of Lyle's syrup, tucked in every pantry, made several tarts for pennies. Served warm with custard, It was pure comfort against a cold Sunday. Oral histories recall the chewy edges and the way the filling caught in the teeth, sweet enough to satisfy the hungriest child. In the leaner years, treacle tart turned stale bread and cheap syrup into a small celebration. Today it survives as a nostalgic treat, rather than a weekly ritual. Number 13. Queen of Puddings wore a crown of meringue and stood as one of the cleverest thrift desserts of its age. Housewives soaked breadcrumbs in warm, sweetened milk enriched with egg yolks, baked it into a soft custard base, spread it with jam, then piled the whipped whites on top and browned them into peaks. Nothing was wasted, not the stale bread nor the spare egg whites. A pudding cost mere pennies yet looked fit for royalty, which gave it its name. Oral histories recall the moment the golden meringue was carried steaming to the table, held up in WI halls as the height of resourceful elegance. Yet the 3 careful stages took time few could spare. Today, Queen of Puddings is a rarity. Number 12. Lemon meringue pie brought a touch of dazzle to the parish tea, its tangy filling and cloud-like topping catching every eye on the trestle table. Housewives thickened lemon juice and sugar with corn flour into a bright, sharp curd, poured it into a pastry case, then crowned it with whipped meringue browned to golden peaks. The contrast of sour and sweet felt thrillingly modern in the 1950s, and a single lemon and a spoon of corn flour made a pie that looked like a bakery showpiece. Oral histories recall the pride of the woman whose meringue stood tallest and never wept, and the fete crowds who gathered round as though it were a prize exhibit. Yet as chilled cabinet desserts arrived, the homemade version lost its shine. Today, it survives, but rarely with the towering meringue of old. Number 11. Gooseberry Fool folded the tart fruit of the summer garden into soft billows of cream and custard. Housewives stewed gooseberries with sugar until they collapsed, pushed them through a sieve, then swirled the sharp green puree through cooled custard or whipped cream, leaving ripples of fruit through the pale cloud. Served in small glasses, it turned a hedgerow harvest into something genteel, and a bowl of gooseberries from the allotment cost nothing at all. Oral histories recall the pucker of the fruit against the smooth cream, a taste of high summer. Yet as fresh fruit grew year-round and fools fell from fashion, the dish faded from the table. Today the Gooseberry Fool is a nostalgic taste of vanished summers. Number 10. Baked stuffed apples turned the humblest windfall into a warm and fragrant pudding. Housewives cored large cooking apples, packed the centers with mincemeat, sultanas, or simply brown sugar and a knob of butter, then baked them until the flesh collapsed into a fluffy, fragrant heap. A drizzle of golden syrup and a jug of custard finished the dish. When the vicarage orchard or the back garden gave up its fruit, the apples cost nothing, and few puddings filled a hall so cheaply. Oral histories recall the sweet steam rising as the apples split their skins in the oven. In autumn, baked apples appeared at harvest suppers across the country, warm and comforting on darkening evenings. Yet, as elaborate desserts took over, the simple baked apple slipped away, surviving today mostly in the kitchens of those who still keep a fruit tree. Number 9. Rhubarb crumble bubbled up in church halls every spring, sharp and sweet beneath its golden lid. Housewives stewed allotment rhubarb with sugar to tame its bite, tipped it into a dish, and scattered over a rubble of flour, margarine, and sugar that crisped in the oven into a buttery crust. A handful of ginger warmed the fruit against the cold. Rhubarb from the garden cost nothing, and a crumble stretched to feed a hall full of parishioners for pennies. Oral histories recall the tug-of-war between the tart fruit and the sweet topping, softened by a river of custard. Though crumbles still appear today, the sharp, homegrown version, made from stalks pulled that morning, has largely given way to milder shop-bought fruit. Number 8. Syllabub whispered of older, grander times, even as it graced the humblest parish supper. Housewives whipped cream with sugar, lemon, and a generous splash of sweet wine, sherry, or cider until it thickened into a frothy cloud, then spooned it into small glasses to be eaten with a tiny spoon. Light, boozy, and faintly wicked, it lent a note of celebration to a church anniversary, a little cream and the dregs of the sherry bottle making an elegant pudding for next to nothing. Oral histories recall the surprising kick beneath the sweetness, served to the grown-ups while children looked on in envy. Rooted in centuries of English cookery, the syllabub was already old-fashioned by the 1950s, and as tastes turned to chilled convenience, it vanished almost entirely. Today it survives only at the most traditional of tables. Number 7. Sussex pond pudding was the showstopper of the steamed pudding world, a dish that hid a secret at its heart. Housewives lined a basin with sweat crust, filled it with butter and sugar, then buried a whole lemon, pricked all over, in the center before sealing and steaming it for hours. When turned out and cut, a rich buttery sauce flooded out like a pond, and the softened lemon within delivered a sharp, fragrant surprise, all for little beyond sweet, sugar, and a single lemon. Oral histories recall the gasp as the golden sauce spread across the plate, cheap ingredients turned into pure theatre. Yet the long steaming demanded time, and the pudding slipped from fashion. Today, Sussex pond pudding is a legend more often described than tasted. Number 6. Cabinet pudding brought a note of quiet elegance to the church hall, a soft steamed custard studded with fruit and sponge. Housewives layered stale sponge or sponge fingers with glacé cherries and dried fruit in a mold, poured over a rich egg custard, and steamed it gently until it set into a tender, trembling dome. It made the most of yesterday's cake and a few spare eggs, yet carried an old-fashioned dignity once served in the grandest dining rooms. Oral histories recall the soft, fragrant slices dotted with jewel-bright cherries, appearing at church anniversaries and Sunday gatherings, special without costing much. Yet its careful steaming fell out of favor, and today the cabinet pudding is almost entirely forgotten. Number 5. Bread pudding, dense and dark and spiced, was the church fete's great survivor, sold in heavy squares by the plateful. Housewives soaked stale bread in milk until it turned to a soft mush, then mixed in dried fruit, sugar, sweat or margarine, and a heavy hand of mixed spice before baking it in a deep tin until firm. Cut cold into squares and dusted with sugar, it was almost a cake, sturdy enough to carry home in a paper bag. Nothing embodied thrift so completely, turning a stale loaf into a beloved treat for barely a penny a portion. Today, the proper heavy bread pudding survives only in a handful of old-fashioned bakeries. Number 4. Steamed treacle sponge was the crowning comfort of a cold Sunday, a golden dome that filled the hall with the sweet scent of syrup. Housewives poured a generous pool of golden syrup into the bottom of a basin, spooned a light sponge batter over the top, covered it with pleated greaseproof and cloth, and steamed it for a couple of hours until it rose tender and soaked through. Turned out, the syrup ran down its sides in glossy amber rivers. A basin cost only flour, a little fat, and a tin of Lyle's, yet it felt like an embrace. Oral histories recall the impatient wait as the pudding steamed, windows fogging with the promise of what was to come. Served with lashings of custard, it was pure warmth. As microwaves and packet puddings arrived, the long steam was abandoned. Today, it is a rare and treasured sight. Number 3. Jam roly-poly rolled its way through every church hall and school canteen as the sturdiest, most cheerful pudding of the age. Housewives rolled out a slab of sweet pastry, spread it thick with bright red jam, rolled it into a fat spiral, and steamed or baked it until the kitchen fogged and the jam bled sweetly through the crust. Sliced into rounds and drowned in custard, it filled the hungriest parishioner for a matter of pennies. Suet and flour gave it heft, and jam gave it joy. Oral histories recall the sticky pinwheel of red against pale dough and the unspoken contest to manage a second helping. Yet, as tastes lightened and puddings shrank, it slipped away. Today, jam roly-poly is a rarity, its legend larger than its presence. Number 2. Spotted dick and custard held a place of deep affection at the parish table, a steamed sweet pudding freckled with currants and sultanas. Housewives mixed sweet, flour, sugar, and a generous handful of dried fruit, then steamed the mixture for hours in a basin or wrapped in a cloth until it swelled dense and fragrant. Cut into thick slices and flooded with hot yellow custard, it was the very definition of comfort against a cold British afternoon. A pudding cost little more than a bag of currants, yet it satisfied like nothing else. Oral histories recall the cheer that went up when spotted Dick appeared, and the strict rule that no one left a scrap. In church halls and school dinners alike, it was a weekly fixture. Today the steamed pudding has faded, its warm comfort now a memory. And finally, in first place, number 1. The sherry trifle crowned the church hall table as the undisputed queen of every fete, anniversary and harvest supper across the land. Housewives began with sponge fingers or leftover cake soaked in sherry, layered them with fruit and a set raspberry jelly, poured over a deep blanket of thick custard, and finished the tower with billows of whipped cream and a defiant scatter of hundreds and thousands. Each layer told its own story, thrift beneath and celebration on top. A trifle cost only a few shillings, yet it was the proudest dish a woman could carry to the bring and buy, and no two were ever quite the same. Oral histories recall the fierce, unspoken rivalry over whose trifle stood tallest, whose custard set firmest, and whose sherry was poured with the boldest hand. Children hovered for the cream and sprinkles, while the grown-ups savoured the boozy warmth beneath. Set in a great glass bowl at the head of the trestle table, it shimmered like a small miracle of thrift. Today, the proper homemade trifle, built by hand over an afternoon, has largely surrendered to the plastic supermarket tub. But for those who tasted it in a crowded church hall on a Saturday afternoon, it was more than a pudding. It was the sweet heart of the community itself. From the trembling junket that opened our list to the triumphant sherry trifle at its crown, these 30 forgotten desserts were never just recipes. They were thrift turned into joy, stale bread and cheap syrup transformed into a taste of celebration. Which one did your nan used to make? Tell me in the comments, and if this stirred a memory, give it a like before you go.